You are listening to episode number 67 of the Everything Ham Radio podcast. Today we are going to talk about PSK31. We have a special guest, Ian Kahn, Kilo Mike 4 India Kilo, on with us. We have some upcoming events and contests, as well as some hamfests for the next 2 weeks, so stick around. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Everything Ham Radio podcast. My name is Curtis, my call sign is Kilo 5 Charlie Lima Mike. Today we're going to be talking about PSK31, and we're going to talk with Ian Kahn, Kilo Mike 4 India Kilo. We have a great interview for you, but before we get to that, you can find all the links as well as some additional information in the show notes of today's episode, and you can find that at everythinghamradio.com/podcast/67. That's the number 67. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/everythinghamradio or the group at facebook.com/groups/everythinghamradio. I'm on YouTube at youtube.com/everythinghamradio and on Twitter at K5CLM. So, today, like I said, we're going to be talking with Ian Kahn about PSK31, and he actually has, I think, pretty well given me the PSK31 bug. So I thank you for that, Ian. My wife probably does not, as I mentioned a little later in the show, but I'm really excited. I'm really excited for this episode, and there was some great information. And yeah, like I said, I think I got the bug. So I think before I go any further than that, let's go ahead and get started with Ian. Hey everybody, we are here with Ian Kahn. His call sign is Kilo Mike 4 India Kilo. And today we're going to be talking about PSK31. And I finally got to this interview. I finally found somebody that will talk to me. Ian so graciously stepped forward on short notice and has agreed to talk to us about PSK and what it's all about and how to get started in it. So, Ian, welcome to the show. Why don't you tell everybody who you are and how you came into this hobby?
Well, thanks, Curtis. And let me start by saying I'm a sucker for running my mouth, and I saw you needed somebody to talk to for an hour, so here I am.
So what other kind of topics do you know I might need?
We'll take that off the air. How about that? So, like you said, my call is Kilo Mike 4 India Kilo. Unlike a lot of people, I didn't get licensed as a teenager. I got licensed 10 years ago, in 2007, right after the FCC decided that we no longer had to know CW to get a license. My father-in-law is a ham, and has been a ham since the early 90s. He's Alpha Bravo 4 Tango Tango. Now he just upgraded to his extra earlier this year. Last year, and finally got around to getting a vanity call. I've been on him for, let's see, I started out in 2007. I tested to Tech in General, and then about 9 months later in 2008, I tested to Extra, and I said, "Hey, if I can do this, you can do this. Batter up."
Exactly.
And it took him, let's see, 8 years to get it. He went through like 3 different versions of the exam.
Yeah.
Question pool studying for his extra, but He finally got it, and he grabbed a vanity call last year. So he's AB4 TT, and my wife and I had been married about 9 years or so, and when we were first dating, I'd go over to their house, to their apartment and hang out, and he'd have all his ham gear stacked up there, and we'd get in the car to go. I work in the IT field, and he's a little geeky like me, and we'd go to computer shows here in the I live in the Metro Atlanta area, and we'd go to computer shows. There used to be in those days about one a quarter at one of the civic centers here. So that's how we'd go spend a Saturday together. And he'd get in the van, and the first thing he'd do is pop on his 2-meter radio. And I finally, one day I finally was like, you know what? We get in the van, he turns on the radio and just listens around. And occasionally he finds somebody to talk to on the repeater. It's Saturday morning. People are doing their thing. The repeaters aren't horribly busy. but he finds a member of the club or a friend is or whatever, and they chat for a few minutes, and I was like, that just looks like a lot of fun, and I'm missing out. So in 2007, it was a little bit before, it was early in the year. It was probably a month or so. My birthday's in March. It was about a month or so before my birthday. I was like, so what would you say to me if I said, I think I want to do this. I think I finally want to take the plunge. And he'd been trying to just kind of gently nudge me in that direction for my wife and I met and started dating in 96, right after I moved to Atlanta. And this is 2007. So 11 years, he'd been gently, he'd been very subtle, very gentle about it. He wasn't like I tend to get, or like others like, okay, come on, you need to be a ham.
You're not stubborn.
So I'm sorry?
You're not stubborn, are you?
It depends who you ask. My wife, my mother-in-law, my son, my parents, my siblings, my aunts, uncles, cousins, families, friends would all say, yeah. I say sometimes. But, anyway, I don't think it was a matter of stubbornness. I think it was, I just needed to come to it in my own time, right? But one of the other things I tell people about the backstory of how I got into ham radio was a missed opportunity when I was a teenager. And so I grew up in Columbia, South Carolina. And when I was 13, 14, hang on. I'm sorry, something went down the wrong pipe. I just can't get things cleared up. When I was about 13 or 14, I was babysitting a family that belonged to the synagogue I grew up in. And, I babysat every Monday afternoon. Dad was off working, and Mom was teaching in the Hebrew school at the synagogue, so I watched the kids. Dad was and still is a very active ham. Dad is Alpha Alpha 4 Victor, Steve Reichlin, who now lives outside of Charleston. And his shack was in the same room that his kids used as a playroom. And he had a tower out in the backyard, and it had a 3 or 4 element Yagi on top of it. And, I used to sit there while the kids are playing and looking at the gear. And, I was the 13, 14-year-old kid looking at that going, that's the adult stuff. You don't touch it. It's the adult stuff. You don't even bother. He had QSL cards tacked all over the wall. It was a great setup. Excuse me. If I knew then what I know now, my parents probably would have shot me because it would have been one more expensive geeky hobby for me to get into. I was the kid that was, I was in middle school going to computer camps during the summer. I wasn't going to, I wasn't going to Boy Scout camp. I didn't do the Boy Scouts. I wasn't going to Boy Scout camp or going off to the YMCA or anything like that. I was going to learn how to write code. And this is back in the days when, the days of the Commodore 64 and the Texas Instruments had the TI-99-4A, and it was all the computers that you actually had to learn to write BASIC. You had to learn to program in BASIC in order to make the computer do anything. Otherwise it was just a big expensive paperweight.
BASIC and assembly and all that good stuff.
They weren't teaching assembly language to 13-year-old kids in those days. There's a little bit too much higher order math needed to do assembly. But, I used to go to the University of South Carolina for summer camp, and I'd go learn how to write BASIC. And it never stuck, which is why I'm in IT security now and not writing code for somebody. But I look back on that and go, that was my missed opportunity. That was my start in ham radio. And then, fast forward 30 years and my father-in-law finally set the hook. And, and like I said, it didn't take me long to go from nothing to extra. It took, 9 months, I think. Right about the time I got my extra, my radio club started a volunteer examiner team. So I've been on that since 2008. I now lead that. I love to contest. I love to DX. I'm fairly proficient at PSK31, and I've dabbled in RIDI and dabbled in JT65, and I discovered JT65 wasn't my thing, but I enjoy PSK31. To come back to the topic of the program tonight,
Perfect segue.
I'm a member of the, there's a club called the Pennsylvania Ohio DX Society, or the Penn Ohio DX Society. Excuse me, and they advocate for and emphasize PSK31. And if I can get my email signature to pull up, I have, they give out, there's 1,000 clubs and organizations in amateur radio that give out numbers. There's 1010 International if you're a 10-meter operator. There's groups like the 3905 Century Club and Ole Miss that give you numbers for chasing worked all states. And the Penn Ohio DX Society gives out numbers for PSK 31. And I've got one of those, and give me just a second here, and excuse me, I'll have the email up and give that number out. And but PSK is great for just if you want a nice, lazy, slow, easy-going rag chew. PSK is great for that because it's not very fast. It's it's a fairly slow data transfer rate. It's between RTTY and JT65. JT65 is like watching paint dry on the wall, and RTTY is kind of the digital equivalent. I've got a lot of friends here that are big advocates for JT65. They love it because they're working parts of the world that from Atlanta, Georgia, unless you've got a 180-foot tower with a step IR, monster IR with the big high gain, and that's HIGH-GAIN, not high gain like the company makes the antennas. You've got a big antenna, a big Yagi with it's a high gain antenna. It's very difficult to hear places like China and India and Bangladesh from here. But these guys can do it on GT65, and that's great, and more power to them. And RTTY is for when you're digital contesting, or you want really fast back and forth, because RTTY is a very quick transmission mode. It's really fast, and PSK kind of strolls along in the middle there. It's like taking a nice walk down the street and having a nice conversation with your friend while you're doing it. And it's a little more forgiving of typing errors because you have more time to correct the typos than in RTTY. And JT65 is to form. It's kind of set forms for the exchanges, and it's pushing a button on your computer. So so I like it. So let's see. I was talking about the Penn Ohio DX Society, and they have an 070 club, and they called it that because on a lot of the bands, the PSK frequency is .070. So like on 40 meters, it's 7070. On 20 meters, it's 14.070. And my number for that is 1962. It's one of the few numbers I have. I have a 1010 number. I have I stumbled on an Ole Miss number by accident. I accidentally stumbled. And they said, "Oh, well, no, come on, we'll give you a number." So I have a number for them, and I don't know what it is. I have to go to the looked up. So that's kind of my ham story. I could go through the litany. I've got worked all states. I've got triple play. I've got DXCC a couple of times, and don't be too impressed. It was, I was working my initial DXCC, my initial DXCC, and when I turned in all my contacts to the ARRL, it's like I've got some RTTY contacts and some PSK and one or two CW contacts, and everything else is phone. So you get the mixed mode because you've got all that thrown in there, but primarily it's a phone award because I'm just not a big CW operator. I'm not very musically inclined, and so I've had a hard time learning CW, which is another reason why digital is good because it shares some of the same propagation characteristics of CW in that it's not as good as CW getting through in bad band conditions, but it's a whole lot better than phone at getting through in bad band conditions. And like PSK31 is essentially a low power mode. You don't want to run it more than 20 or 25 watts output or 30 watts output. Because if you do that, your signal gets dirty and it splatters all over the waterfall and people get mad at you. But it's got the capability, it's a digital mode, so it has the capability to punch through, some of the more questionable band conditions that sideband really have a hard time with when band conditions are really bad. I don't know if you've gotten on the air any recently. But I know we've had a few geomagnetic storms. I was on the air operating the Georgia QSO party the second weekend in April. I guess it's been about 3 or 4 weeks ago now. And from my QTH, the band noise on 20 meters, and this is just the band noise, was at about S7 or S8.
Wow.
I tried to get on 80 meters, and the band noise at my QTH was 20/9. That was the noise floor.
Wow.
Obviously, I wasn't doing a whole lot of contesting on 80 meters that night.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sorry to say that it's been like, I think probably field day of 2014, 2015, something like that. The last time I was on HF.
Well, I would encourage you, if that was the last time you were on HF, because I've also been field day chairman for my club numerous times. I did a 4-year stint. So I got licensed in 2007, went to field day. Right, I got licensed right before field day, and that was back in the days when it was taking weeks because everybody was getting licensed because CW had gone away. So everybody that couldn't upgrade to general because they needed CW, because they needed 5 words a minute and couldn't pass 5 words a minute, was upgrading to general.
Mm-hmm.
So it took me almost 3 weeks to get my license. So I took the license late April. My call sign came through in mid-May, and the first big event I went to was field day that year in June. So that's 2007. The next year, my father-in-law was the field day chairman for our club, and I just kind of inserted myself, really, and was like, hey, let me help you with that. He had just retired. He and my mother-in-law moved in with us right after they retired. And I'm sitting here watching him go through all this stuff. And I was like, hey, have you thought about this? Have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? Let me do that for you. I'll take care of it. So in 2008, I ran field day with him. And then for the next 3 or 4 years, I was it. I ran field day for our club. I belong to the North Fulton Amateur Radio League here it's in the northern suburbs of Atlanta, is our primary service area. And this year they needed somebody to do it again, and I'm a lollipop and can't say no, so I'm running field day for us again this year. So I'm looking forward to it. But I would, get out to field day.
I honestly, I would love to get out there. I mean, I have an ICOM HF radio sitting here in a box next to me. I moved like a little over a year ago or so, and haven't got my ham station up. But for field day, being that it's on the weekend, I work every weekend. So it's really hard for me to get out, and between working, 6 a.m. to 4 p.m. Saturday and Sunday, and then 4 kids as well, it's really hard for me to get out. I would absolutely love to. I absolutely love to have my station set up here, and I really want to get into PSK31 or Ready or something like that, because that's probably more along my line of things, because I'm more of a technical guy, kind of like you. But
sure.
It's just so hard. I'm lucky to have the 2-hour span that I have to record this podcast away from the family after everybody goes to bed. Much less than anything else. But so let me ask you this: with PSK31, I mean, is it basically just like a keyboard to keyboard QSO, or is there extra things? Kind of like there is with PAC, bulletin boards or anything like that.
Well, it's more the former. It's more the keyboard to keyboard QSO. It's 2 guys or 2 gals, or a guy and a gal, or a guy and a kid, or whomever, sitting across the state, across the city, across the country, and you're typing away at each other, and the software that you've got on your computer is taking the typing and turning it into audio and sending it out the sound card, and the radio is grabbing that audio out of your computer and taking it and converting it into RF and spewing it out into the ionosphere as we are wont to do on HF. It's actually not spewing that badly. Like I said, it's very low power, but it's just a casual back and forth. And if you look, at the software, you got your software up, and it's you've got your waterfall on the bottom of the screen, and you got, in my setup, I do, the waterfall's at the bottom of the screen, and I can see the signals coming in, and the text windows are coming in on the top of the screen. And you can, if you're looking at the waterfall in your spectrum, you're seeing on a busy night, you can see 15, 20, 25 conversations crammed into the same space that a sideband signal takes. So
Wow.
it's very narrow band. Again, I know I've said this 1,000 times, but it's one of the big things about operating PSKs. You do it at lower power. 20, 25, 30 watts and below. So it's almost QRP, but not quite. Obviously, you can drop down below 5 watts and make it QRP. I know some guys that would, they don't turn their little knobby, they don't turn their power up above, 5, 10 watts. They are QRP junkies. But if you operate it at any more than about 30 watts output, you're really going to put out a dirty signal, and your signal's going to be really wide on the waterfall. It's not going to be a nice, tight, clean signal, and it's going to have a lot of sideband. You'd be able to see the sidebands and see the spurs coming off of it, and you're going to upset a lot of people because you're going to be interrupting and disrupting their signals. But yeah, I mean, you can set up macros. Most of the software packages allow you to set up kind of canned responses. And I've kind of been noticing, where I've been paying attention lately, almost a little bit of a backlash. It's kind of the PSK equivalent of the, if you're chasing a DXpedition or you're contesting, 5.9 thank you, and you move on, and everybody's 5.9. Mm-hmm. When I get on in RagShoe, I try to give more accurate signal reports when I'm on phone. But I'm starting to see a little bit of a backlash to people that use the canned macros. Mm-hmm. And I will admit, when I'm operating PSK, for the first couple of back and forths, I use the macros. Because if I can say, hi, my name is this, and here's my call sign, and here's my QTH and my grid square, and hit a function key or push a button that pops all that in for me and sends it. And then after you get all the niceties over and you start having an actual conversation, you sit down at the keyboard and pray I can type faster than the PSK going. And remember, I said before, PSK doesn't move very quickly. But you can either type it in, type your message, put it in the buffer, and then hit your send, and it goes out, and you can watch it going out. Or you can really be brave and hit send and start typing away and pray you don't make too many mistakes while the buffer is following you, sending as fast as you can type. I shudder to use this because people will kill me for doing this, because it's counter to everything we say as hams. But it's almost like instant messaging, from your ham radio perspective. Because that's what you're doing. You're sending text messages back and forth, but you're using the computer to do it. You're using the computer and your radio, and you're using the magic that is amateur radio to do it. And digital modes in general, not just PSK31, but our Aries group here in the Aries group that's attached to my club, the North Fulton Amateur Radio Emergency Services, in their weekly nets, they have digital mode practice every week, because digital communication has become very big in Aries circles, where you're dealing with a lot of information very quickly, and the software they use Winmore, and they use components of FLDigi that some of the different modes they use. They don't use PSK31. They use different variants, like they're using they're not using MFSK. That's Meteor Scatter. There's a variant of there's a variant of PSK they use that PSK doesn't have any error correction in it, but this PSK31 doesn't have any error correction, but this variant that they're using has forward error correction in it, so that, if there's a problem getting an NTS message out, an NTS for The new HAMS listing is National Traffic System, and that's kind of the standard message format that emergency communications providers use. Because they can send NTS messages using some of these digital modes, and they get there nearly error-free. And digital has been a big boon to their capabilities as well. So I forgot where I was going with that.
I think that's a sign of old age, my friend.
Yeah, I'm getting old. My son kids me about that. My son's 11, and he picks on me about that. My father-in-law's in his mid-70s. He picks on me about that. I'm getting it from all ends. But yeah, no, it's a keyboard-to-keyboard chat, and you know, like the Aries groups like to use it because you can get very accurate messages out very quickly that way. Using digital in general. But it's what I like about it is, you know, sometimes you want to be on the air and you want to communicate, but you just don't feel like talking, right? Mm-hmm. So pull up the digital software and go out there with PSK and you can sit there and type, and, you know, you don't have to talk, and you don't have to, you know, really act like you're all bubbly and happy and everything. You know, you can have your conversation. Or sometimes I just feel like getting on PSK31 because I can get people on PSK31 with atmospheric conditions and environmental conditions what they are that maybe I can't reach on sideband, on phone. And like I say, you know, one of these days I'll probably do something about updating my CW skills and upgrading my CW skills to something that qualifies as an operator. At 1 word per minute, but in the meantime, PSK is my digital mode.
So you mentioned that it's slower than RTTY. About how fast does it go?
Well, it's 31 and a quarter, 31 and a half bits per second.
So that translates
to
that's 60
the data
words a minute typing or something like that?
Something like that, yeah.
So most people shouldn't have a hard time keeping up.
Nah. I did a little bit of research and thought that I had the actual transfer rate written down, but I don't see it in my notes. So yeah, I'll guess.
But
it's about 60 words a minute, somewhere in there.
Yeah, that sounds about right. We'll just go with that.
Sure.
But, you know, that
people can yell at me and correct me via email and get nasty with me. You know, after the show. You know, my email's good on QRZ, everybody.
You know, I'm glad that you said that it has the buffer, because I didn't realize that you had the buffer type thing on there, because, you know, when I was looking at getting into this and I was reading stuff and I'm like, okay, well, you know, 31 baud a minute or 31 bauds, and I'm thinking it's like right around 60 words a minute, and I type at like 80. So I'm like, okay, am I going to have to slow down my typing? It's like, okay, you know, peg or something like that.
So now, if you look at the software, you know, you start typing in your input window, in your transmit window. And you know, if you hit send and start typing, you know, you see everything, you know, you see it sending behind you as you're you know, typing along. It's kind of like the one professor in the college, in the university, that everybody hates because he's writing notes with his right hand and coming behind with the eraser with his left hand, and if you didn't get it, you're done. You know, so it's chugging along behind you, sending your message as you're typing out. So if you make a typo, the typo gets sent out, and nobody really cares and nobody fusses about it because, you know, we're all doing it, right? So, you know, we do the best we can and we plug along. Or there's the option in most software packages that you don't hit send and start transmitting yet. You type out what you want to type out, you correct, and then you hit send. And that's the way that I like to do it, because, you know, my typing is atrocious. I can type 40 or 50 words a minute. They're not necessarily words in the English language. They don't necessarily have vowels in them or consonant combinations that make sense. But, you know, I make a lot of typos. And so I like the ability to kind of go back and clean them up before it goes out over the air. And it's like, oh, that's not what I meant to say. You know, because sometimes typos can turn into different words that change the meaning of what you're trying to say.
No.
And sometimes those typos end up being language that shouldn't be transmitted the amateur radio, period. It's not on purpose, but
Well, at
you're a
least
lousy typist, and that's what happens.
at least you don't have the autocorrect like you have on text messages.
Yes. I've had a lot of text messages change to things that they never should have said because of autocorrect on my phone.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of, that's the kind of the message buffer that you have. But once you hit send, it's going. And you can watch it chug along and go. And don't type too long a message at any one time or you'll be sitting there forever watching it go. I do the typing and then hit send and I'll be in the middle of typing, 3 sentences and the guy on the other end is like, "Are you still there? Did I lose you?" No, I'm still here. I'm just a bad typist. And away it goes.
Yeah, okay. Well, let's go ahead and take a quick break, and we're going to come back and we're going to talk a little bit more about PSK and how to actually operate it. So stay tuned, everybody. We'll be right back. Are you tired of lousy propagation conditions and wondering how to work some real DX for a change? Maybe you spin the dial and wonder what's going on below the voice segment of the HF bands. The answer is, you're missing out. You're missing out on digital modes, a rapidly growing and exciting part of amateur radio. Work real DX with the incredible JT65 and JT9 modes. It's no exaggeration when I tell you, you will work stations you never thought possible, even using low power and compromised antennas. Have fun making new contacts in modes such as PSK31, Olivia, Radio Teletype, Slow Scan TV, and many more. The Rig Blaster Advantage is everything you need to operate these exciting digital modes. Made right here in the US, the Rig Blaster interface has set the standards for nearly 20 years. Thousands of satisfied operators have learned their Rig Blaster Advantage will provide solid digital communications, easy operating, and reliability. Don't miss out on the fun and excitement any longer. Head on over to everythinghamradio.com/WMR for more information and learn how to get your free USB port monitor with your purchase. Alright, we are back with Ian Kahn, Kilo Mike 4 India Kilo. We are talking about PSK31. In this segment, let's talk a little bit about what kind of equipment that you need in order to do PSK31. You mentioned that, of course you got to have your radio and you got to have a computer. But
Yep.
Do you need anything special as far as getting the two to talk? Software you need? What kind of stuff like that do you have?
So we covered the radio part. Very important. There's no RF without the radio. You need a computer. It doesn't have to be a horribly robust computer. It doesn't have to be the latest and greatest gee whiz that Dell or Acer or some of those guys or HP has come out with. What it does have to have is a sound card with outputs and input capability. So it'll work if you use mic and line in, or mic and line out or mic and speaker. A little better if you have individual line in and line out as opposed to using microphone and speakers. But microphone and speakers will work just fine. A lot of people work very, very good PSK31 on very basic sound cards. I use an external sound card in my implementation so that I can use my onboard sound card as my computer's sound card. I don't have to worry about I hit send and I accidentally send a whole bunch of Windows tones out over the RF over the airwaves, or I don't accidentally I don't have a web page up that accidentally starts a video of some kind from a pop-up ad, and all of a sudden I'm sending that audio out over the airwaves, which is kind of a no-no. The FCC kind of frowns on you doing things like that.
No.
So the key is if you're going to use the internal sound and external sound cards. I use an external USB sound card that I think is out of production. Actually, it's a Tascan 122. I think is the model I've got, and I believe it's out of production. I picked mine up on eBay. But you can get these external sound cards, and Creative Labs used to make a really nice external sound card that's out of production, but you can pick up these things on eBay. Or, if you're, and they work a little bit better simply because they produce a little bit better audio quality. The sound cards that are integrated into computers, really are just fair to middling from audio quality perspective. But they work great. I ran off on an inboard sound card for years and years and years, and didn't have any problems. Just make sure if you do that, make sure you turn your Windows audio, your Windows sound effects off. Again, so you're not sending the shutdown sound or your, some
Ding.
Windows sound going out. Yeah, you're going, ding,
You've got mail.
Yeah, going out over the airwaves. A lot of people use for external devices. You can also get external devices that are sound cards with circuitry built into them to be isolation transformers or isolation circuitry. And what that accomplishes is it helps keep RF out of your – it provides the isolation so you're not getting any stray RF back into your PSK signal. Excuse me. And there are a whole rafter of manufacturers of those devices. And some of them have the sound card built into them. Some of them don't. Some of them do other things. One of the more popular ones, of course, is the Signal Link by Tigertronics. I used that for years with my FT857 Delta. That radio is now in my car. And so I don't do PSK with it anymore because you should probably appreciate this. Law enforcement frowns on me typing while I'm driving down the highway at 80 miles an hour. Come to think of it, they frown on me driving down the highway at 80 miles an hour, too. This is Atlanta, and the big joke here is the speed limits, the posted speed limits are merely minimum suggested guidelines. They're not actual speed limits.
And we actually have some places here in Texas you can actually drive like 85.
I need to move to Texas.
Yeah. There's actually a toll road that I went to not too long ago. A little off topic here, but a little toll road that you go outside of Austin, and it's a brand new thing. And first time I went on it, I was going down to some RV park or something like that, and I turn on the road and I'm just driving along. You figure probably 65, 70, something like that, like it normally is everywhere else. No, I see a sign and it says 85. My wife didn't see it. So I, stomped on the gas. Here we are, just driving along. She's like, babe, don't you think you got to slow down? Nope. You do realize you're going 85, right? Yep. Don't you think you got to slow down? Nope. Babe, slow down. It's 85. The speed limit is 85. No, it's not. Sure enough, there's another speed limit sign. See? Could you slow down anyways? You're starting to scare me.
my car is a 13-year-old SUV that I love. It's a great car. I'm going to drive it till the wheels fall off of it, but it starts to shimmy really badly at about 80, 85 miles an hour, so I don't dare push it harder than that. But anyway, so the 857D that I had is mounted in the car, so I don't do digital from that. My shack radio is an old Elecraft K3, very, very low serial number K3 that I bought used several years ago. And it has the capability, it's got isolation circuitry already built into it. So I can go the output of the sound card, of my external sound card, directly to the input, to the line in on the K3, and the line out on the computer, line in on the computer to the line out on the K3, in to out to in, and do it directly. And I don't need anything in between to act as an isolation device. I use my Signal Link now. I have an FT817 ND that I use, that I take when I travel sometimes, depending on where I'm going and how long I'm going to be there. And I reconfigured the Tiger Link, or the Signal Link, to go with the 817. And I can do PSK from a picnic table somewhere, or, a hotel room or whatever have you, as long as I have room to put an antenna up and connect everything. So the Signal Link is one, and it's very popular because it's very affordable, and you can get it either directly from Tigertronics. You can get DX Engineering sells them. I think a whole bunch of other, you can go to HRO or Gigaparts or any of those guys. Any of the big amateur equipment vendors sells them. Right around $90. So, maybe a few dollars more for the cables for your. You do need to get cables specific to your radio, and the model of SignalLink I have, you had to crack the case open. It come with a little Allen wrench and a bunch of diagrams, and you had to set all these jumpers inside. But once you set the jumpers, you were done. Set it and forget it. Screw it back up, and plug it in, and it's literally plug and play. It goes, USB into the back of the device, USB connection to your computer, and and the connection from the SignalLink over to your radios, and you're done, and away you go. So that's one device. There's West Mountain Radio makes the Rig Blaster series of devices that a lot of people like, and they do a lot more. I think they've got ones that'll send CW for you and do all kinds of things. Microham makes a line of, they call them micro keyers, and those are all, but they're all kind of the same thing. These are devices that include the sound card and include some isolation circuitry so that you're not sending getting RFI back in your signal. And depending on your radio, you may need them. You may not, depending on the radio. But the essentials and the key to most of them is they provide an outboard sound card, and some of them provide multiple USB ports. So, you want to run your PSK, your digital station, and you want to run, you've got maybe an antenna rotor, maybe you've got a nice big high-end antenna on a 80-foot tower in your backyard, and the rotor controller is attached to it, and a microphone or a mixer or something for your sideband, whatever. And a keyer for, you've got an older radio that doesn't have a keyer in it for CW, so you need a keying device. And they come in all price points, and everybody's got their favorite, and it's like everything else in ham radio.
Right.
You ask two hams, you get three opinions.
So you got your computer, you got your radio, and you have your sound card. Do you need a TNC?
No, you do not need a TNC. TNC is for packet. It's a terminal node controller, and that's a requirement if you're doing old school packet. And this is not old school packet. This uses, and don't ask me to get into the technicals because I really can't. I just know they use different frequencies, different modulation schemes, and they're different ways of operating, and you can't do packet without a TNC, but you can certainly do PSK31 without a TNC all day long. And so you hook all these devices together. You follow your appropriate manufacturer's instructions, and they're going to have potentially different methods of keying them. Some use push to talk, some use Fox, voice operated keying. Some use cat commands, depending on your radio, your device, your PSK software. We haven't gotten to that part yet. You do need appropriate software. And as with everything else in amateur radio, there's a whole bunch of different variations on the software that you can use. And it's how robust are you looking to get? Do you want free? Are you willing to spend a little bit of money? Without getting into advertisements for other people's products on your show, I will say and people will probably be able to figure out what I use. The software I use is not free. It does cost a little bit of money, and I was willing to. I actually struck a good deal with the manufacturer.
Go ahead. What do you use?
So I use Ham Radio Deluxe, and I use the component of Ham Radio Deluxe called DM780, Digital Master 780. I used it when it was free, years and years and years ago, when it was developed by Simon Brown, HB9DRV, an English guy living in Switzerland. And it was bought by three gentlemen here in the U.S. when Simon decided he wanted to focus on, I think it was SDR is what he moved into. And he just said, you know what, I'm not going to develop this anymore. He wasn't making any money on it. He wasn't charging for it. And he was getting, a lot of requests for bug fixes that he kept promising, and just, life happens and you don't always get to things as quickly as you'd like to. So in 2010, 2011, trying to think how long ago it was. He sold the software to three hams here in the U.S. That partnership is now down to two hams here in the U.S., and it became HRD Software LLC. and I happen to do a lot of evangelizing for them, so I've got a very nice deal with them on the software. But and DM780 is a very good piece of software. It's very robust. It does the only digital mode that I know of that it doesn't do is JT65. And they were trying to incorporate JT65, and there was some issues getting the right licensing and everything with the person that develops the JT65 software. That's not Joe Taylor. Joe Taylor has WSJTX. That's a freebie. And there's another software package, and I can't remember what it's called, and it's a freebie, and HRD Software was going to license it and put it in theirs, and something happened. And I don't know if it was people got sick, people stopped developing, people froze the code, I don't know. But DM780 will do several modes of PSK. It will do several modes of RIDI. It does Olivia. It does Hellschreiber. It does modes I've never heard of before. I clicked the drop down. Man, what is that? So very strong, very solid, very robust. It'll even do CW for you. It'll key CW for you. The thing about software packages doing CW for you is there is no consistent send and receive quality on a CW signal because everybody's fist is different. With the digital modes, there are standards and protocols, and you know what you're getting when you get it. My K3 does CW decode, and I try to use that to catch some of the de-expeditions and let it translate for me. And most of the time, it's just E's and T's because the signal is so weak and the guy's fist is so erratic that it just can't keep up. So, like I said, I got to train my ears and my brain box to do a better job at CW.
Right.
But there are a lot of very good free software packages out there. So HRD is Windows only. FLDigi is probably, in all honesty, one of the most popular packages. It's available for Windows, Linux, and Mac. And it actually was originally written for Linux. So if anybody that's listening is a big Linux guy, I'm working on building that skill. I haven't moved it into my check. I've got two computers in my office here at home. One runs Windows, one runs Linux. And then I'm just Windows in the shack. So I stick to Windows-based stuff. But FLDigi is written for all three systems. Very well maintained, very well supported. And if I'd been smart when I was doing my prep, I would have gotten the website and the name of the guy that wrote it and all that good stuff because it's incredibly well supported, very robust. It does at PSK and RIDI and a couple others too.
Well, we will have links to all these the software that we're talking about here, as well as some other things in the show notes of today's episode. So just check on there for that if you are interested in those. Let's move on a little bit here. You said you don't have to have the full strength computer and stuff like that. I'm assuming you could probably even do this with like a Raspberry Pi, maybe. Do you know?
That's a tough one. That I don't know. And the only reason I don't know is because, most of these packages, and I'm going to drop just a couple other packages here while we're talking about this. Digipan is for Windows. MMTTY is RIDI and PSK, and that comes with N1MM Logger Plus if you use that for contesting. WinWarbler is another old Windows package out there. The challenge with Raspberry Pi is the chip architecture. So, everything we've talked about so far, even the Macs anymore, all run on Intel x86 or x64 architecture, which is your standard 32-bit or 64-bit microprocessor architecture. The Raspberry Pi uses a chipset called ARM, ARM. And it's a totally different, at the chip level, code set. So the software has to be compiled specifically for a Raspberry Pi. That said, Raspberry Pi runs Linux as the base operating system. So if you had a copy of the software compiled for the Raspberry Pi, then absolutely you could use a Raspberry Pi. You just have to make sure the software is compiled for it.
So technically, you can really get into this really fairly cheap, I would imagine, since you have a low power transmission. I mean, you can technically build a a $20 HF kit to run your radio part.
Yep.
You can find an old laptop or something you have hanging around or stuck in your shack or your closet or whatever to run that with, or buy a cheap one off of eBay.
I'm going to go one better with you, actually, if I can.
Yeah.
So my very first radio when I got licensed was a Yaesu FT747 GX2. It's a wonderful radio. It's 80s vintage solid state radio. It has 4 modes: sideband, or upper and lower sideband, and I count those, I guess, as one, AM, FM, and CW. No digital mode capability. So as a kit build, my club did a interface plugged into the microphone input of the 747 GX. It had cabling, the proper USB or appropriate port cabling. I think it was still DB9 in those days to go to the computer. And it even let that old radio, which I didn't spend a lot of money on, send PSK31. And, the kit itself was only about $15 or $20. And a morning with the guys in the club to and a couple of soldering iron burns to learn how to build. And, very inexpensive and very, very much did the job, just exactly what I needed it to do. And, older, lower end, equipment. I wasn't running a high end radio. I was running state of the art radio at the time. And that's another thing, if your radio that you have doesn't have a data mode on it, a lot of the radios today do. Digital modes are almost universally upper sideband, regardless of what band you're on. So you can send, just put your radio on upper sideband, tune to the right frequency, and away you go. So yeah, you can get into it very easily and very inexpensively.
Awesome. All right, well, let's go ahead and take another quick break here. When we come back, we're going to wrap this up, and we're going to talk about how to operate it, how to operate PSK31. This is kind of what I'm really looking forward really to, because I'm still really lost at how you operate this thing. So stay tuned. We'll be right back with Ian Kahn.
So have I lost everybody yet?
Oh, no. You're good. You're doing good.
This is a lot of fun. I'm having a good time with this.
All right. So we got operating. Mm-hmm. We've already covered whether it's just a keyboard to keyboard thing. Mm-hmm. So I when I was doing a little looking up on this, I saw that the BPSK31 mm-hmm. does the two frequencies of tone on the same frequency. How does the regular PSK? Actually, no. Well, I'm not even gonna let you answer that. Let's talk about that in the thing.
That'll be a thing in the thing. Right?
Yeah, we'll do the thing in the thing. Yeah.
All right. Sounds good.
All right.
So I hope you didn't mind that I plugged one of your sponsors, by the way.
Oh, no. That's
West Mountain.
That's perfectly fine.
They got to be happy with that.
Yeah, and their ad actually runs right before that segment too. So.
Oh, perfect. What a great time.
Let's see, 104 and 20. All right, so here we go. In 3, 2, 1. Hey everybody, so I got a quick couple little things I want to tell y'all about real quick, and then we'll get right back to the interview. First thing I want to let y'all know, I finally got my swag store launched, okay? I have several items on there. I have a coffee mug, I have a mouse pad, I have some coasters on there, several things on there that with the Everything Ham Radio logo. I'm working on some other stuff. I'm going to be doing my custom call sign desk nameplates as well. I'm going to be working on that. I'm actually making one of my own call sign for my own desk that I have a picture of a little later. Working on that, working on some hats and some shirts and stuff like that. So check it out. You can find it at everythinghamradio.com/store. So head on over there, check it out. Buy your own very own coffee cup or mouse pad or something like that if yours is kind of run down or whatever. But check that out. One more way that you can help me support this podcast. Also, check out. Also, if you need some QSL cards, make sure you head on over to Randy, KB3IHF. Check out his website. He makes some awesome QSL cards. He's an awesome guy. You can find a link to it in the show notes of today's episode. When you give him a call to place your order, make sure that you mention that you heard about him on this show, and I will get a small affiliate commission. So that pretty much it. That's all the news that I got so far. So let's get back to the interview with Ian Kahn. And we are back with, again, Ian Kahn, a Kilo Mike 4 India Kilo. In this segment, we're going to talk about how to operate. And this is actually what I've been looking forward to, because like I said in the last segment, I have totally lost on how to operate this. So, Ian, why don't you kind of give us like a rundown on how you actually, the computer interface, how do you find a QSO? I know you said a waterfall display, and I've seen that on YouTube a couple times, but I've never actually seen one in person. How do you find a QSO? How do you, you said there's like 20 of them in one frequency. How does that work?
So PSK31 is very, very narrow band in terms of the bandwidth that it takes. So it can fit 10, 15, 20 QSOs in the space of the 2.8 kilohertz that you would need for a typical sideband conversation. If you're operating PSK31, we're going to assume that you've gone ahead and you've installed the software. You found your favorite package, you downloaded it, it's installed on your computer. You do need to do some configuration and some setup. You have to tell it, you have to set up, you have to configure your sound card, make sure you're using the right sound card. And if you're using the onboard, like I said at the top, make sure you turn off your Windows sound so you don't send things out over the internet, over the air you shouldn't be sending. You need to identify how it's going to key your transmitter, the transmitter part of your transceiver. And, that's going to vary from software package to software package and from radio to radio. Like I said, it could use cat commands, it could use Vox, it could use, I forgot what the third was. Anyway, there are a number of different it could use push to talk, it could use Vox, it could key your push to talk. You could use Vox, or it could use, the cat. Man, this getting old stinks. Yeah, it uses the cat. So you have to set those things up. If there's a USB connectivity or a COM port connectivity involved anywhere, you need to make sure everything's on the right COM port, and that may be getting into a little more in the weeds if you're doing multiple things. Like for my radio to communicate with my computer, I've got to have the right COM port set up, and same communication speed and all that. So you tune generally your radio to one of there are kind of, accepted PSK31 frequencies. I know the ones for 40 meters, like I said, is 70 kilohertz. The one for 20 is 14.070 megahertz. And you can Google PSK frequencies, and there's a gazillion websites that'll tell you what they are. Everything from Wikipedia. You can look at the Wikipedia article on BPSK31 that I was looking at earlier, and it's actually got a list of the standard frequencies. And they may vary a little bit based on where in the world you are, because as we know, band plans are different. ITU Region 1, Region 2, Region 3. Those of us here in the U.S., of course, are in Region 2. So pay attention to that band plan if you're given multiple options. But generally on or around the 070 is kind of where you line up.
And we will have those frequencies in the show notes, so you can go there too.
Yep. So you set your radio either to, if it has a data mode, a lot of radios now have a data mode, you can set it to your data mode. And in many radios, that'll take care of things like setting your compression, setting ALC. And in most cases, you don't want compression on a digital signal. Setting your ALC so that it transmits appropriately for a digital signal, as opposed to your voice or a CW signal. Hang on. Excuse me, needed to wet the throat. Or you can put your radio on upper sideband, as I said in the last segment. the digital modes predominantly operate on upper sideband. So if you don't have that data mode, upper sideband will work. And you will hear the dulcet tones of PSK31 coming through if you tone to, 14, we'll use 20 meters as an example, 14070, plus or minus 3 or 4. Generally plus 3 or 4 as opposed to minus. But and when you're operating, you set your radio on that 070, and your software will look at a spread, and that spread may vary. I think DM780, I think, uses a couple of kilohertz spread around and 14070 is usually at the bottom, at the left edge of the screen, at the bottom of that range, and it goes up. If everything is configured properly and you've got your audio levels set correctly, and a lot of this you're going to have to play with because it's going to vary from computer to computer and radio to radio and software to software, and just too many permutations of all those things to even try and think about. But you get everything adjusted properly, and you will be able to see signals on the waterfall. So what is the waterfall? It's almost like if you watch the movies and, the old World War II movies where the guy's in the submarine and he's looking at the sonar, and you see, the different colored signal, and it's going from the top of the screen down to the bottom of the screen. And it's called a waterfall because it looks like water flowing down the screen. So you can actually see, the static and the background noise and the atmospheric noise will look just like that on your waterfall, if you've got it tuned sensitively enough that it picks that up. The signal will be a good solid bar that is a kilohertz wide or so on your waterfall, and it will be, depending on how clean it is, it could be really wide and have a lot of sidebars, like I talked about earlier, a lot of sidebands coming out from it, or it could be very tight, very narrow, and that's going to be a good clean PSK signal. And each one of those little bars that you see going down your screen is a different PSK31 QSO. And it's somebody calling CQ, or if it's a QSO in progress, or somebody testing their equipment, or whatever have you. And in most software packages, what you would do is the screen's divided into several windows, and one window is going to be your receive window, and it's got everything that's coming in, or the signal that wherever you've clicked on, and I'll get to that in a second, coming in, and it's either decoding or not, depending on how good the signal is or whether there's a signal there or not. You've got a send window, a transmit window, which is where you type your transmit buffer. So you type your outbound message, and that's where you compose your message before you hit whatever the send key is in your particular software, and it keys the transceiver, and it does all of its voodoo and sends the signal out. And then you've got your waterfall, and you may have other windows. You may have a gray line map. You may have your macros that are your canned messages, and other things that are easy to get. But those are the three basic things you're going to have. And so in that waterfall, the way you pick a signal to listen to is you click on it in the waterfall, and that tells the software what signal you want to look at and what signal you want to decode. And you just go through and click on the different signals and watch them decode, and you can determine, is it somebody calling CQ that I want to answer? Is it another conversation that I maybe want to hang out on and just kind of eavesdrop and read the mail for a little bit? Is it a DXpedition from a rare DX entity that I really need to make DXCC honor roll, and I want to go try and grab that one?
So you don't actually have to touch your radio or your VFO to select the different people that are talking. You just click on your screen?
You got it.
Wow.
In fact, you set your VFO and you just leave it alone, because generally the software is going to cover, most if not all of the spectrum on that band. PSK doesn't use a whole lot of, it's maybe 5 kilohertz of any band. It's not like RTTY where you've got 10, 15, 20 kilohertz swaths of the band that you're using for RTTY, because RTTY, of course, if you look at it, it actually uses two frequencies per RTTY signal, per RTTY conversation. You're using two frequencies, so it uses more bandwidth from that perspective. But you could have RTTY conversations interleaved within each other. So PSK only uses the one frequency per conversation, so you can get more kind of bang for your buck, if you will. There are also, I think, probably in a whole fewer people that are actually doing PSK31 as opposed to RTTY, simply because RTTY is big in the contesting world because it's fast, and PSK is not, so it's not horribly big in the contesting world. But it's fun. So you point and click on the signal. The software handles everything behind the scenes, and if you get a good clean signal, and just somebody calling CQ, and in my case, if I'm calling CQ, so I cheat a little. I have macros set up for CQ and for the first kind of identifying who you are, and then I go into a nice keyboard to keyboard chat. So my CQ macro is, CQ DE, KM4IK, KM4IK, and then another line that's CQ to KM4IK, KM4IK, PSE for please, KN for acknowledge and return. And it uses a lot of the same shortcuts and shorthanding. I mean, we all use the Q codes in everything, but because it's a digital mode and because you want to be efficient, you don't want to write War and Peace while you're communicating with somebody on a digital mode. So you use a lot of the same shortcuts from CW, or shorthand, I should say, and a lot of the same Q codes and things like that are very popular in CW. It's like any other. You sit there and you call CQ until somebody answers you. So say I'm calling CQ, and Colin, you see me out there, and you see my signal decode on your waterfall, and you want to answer it. So you click on it in your whatever PSK software you're using, and you type in N5. What's your call? Help me out. I'm
K5
sorry.
CLM.
K5 CLM. I should know that. I'm a bad guest for not knowing your call sign. So you would type in KM4IK, K5 CLM, PSEK, or PSEKN. So please acknowledge. And you might put that in the buffer a couple of times, and then you hit send, and it comes back to me. And I see your thing, and I say K5 CLM to KM4IK. And I send my, hi, my name is, and my QTH is, and I'm in grid square Echo Mike 74, and here's, and then my brag, I'm using this radio and this 8,000 watt amplifier, and I've got this, 800 square foot antenna.
I hope you're not using that much power. Shame on you if you are.
We're not supposed to tell anybody. No, I've got a 500 watt amplifier, but you don't use it on PSK31 anyway, because remember, 30 watts, right? Mm-hmm. 30 watts is probably too much. So and then you send back the same stuff to me, and maybe you've got that info programmed into your buffer so that you hit a function key and it pops in, or you click a pre-configured button in your software and it populates all that for you and away, and you hit send and away, and we do that, and then we start having our little chat. And I'm typing stuff to you and hitting send. And while you're reading what's populating on the screen from my end of the conversation, you're typing your reply in. So that as soon as mine finishes, and you've been reading along and typing your response at the same time, and you hit send and away it goes. And it's a simplex mode, right? Just like everything else in radio. You can send or you can receive, but there's no full break-in like in CW. There's no QSK here. We're not interspersing our conversations. And we may carry on like that for, a couple of minutes and trade signal reports, and away you go. And it uses the same readability, signal, and tone that CW uses. So you would give, a 599 if it comes in and it's perfectly clear, it decodes perfectly clearly, and you're looking at the signal on the waterfall, and it's a good sharp signal, and no sidebands, no spurs. That would be a 599. A tone is kind of hard to get on PSK unless you I generally don't put the headset on when I'm listening to PSK when I'm working PSK because I just don't want to listen to it. It's nice to listen to, in the abstract for a minute or two just to make sure you're getting signal. But, after that, okay, yeah, there's activity on the band. Hang the cans back on the rack and, let's get to chatting.
Right.
But that's basically it. And then you close off, thanks for the QSO 73 and, you sign, when you finish your chat, you sign, you put SK, silent key, not to mean you're passing away, but, the end of the QSO is silent key. I'm shutting up now.
Mm-hmm.
And then you log the contact and, if you're into that kind of thing, I am because, I like to log my contacts and I'm a funny guy. I like to chase paper. I said before, I've got worked all states and I've got triple play and I've got a couple of DXCCs and I'm working on 5-band, DXCC right now but I'm not working very hard on it. If I get it, great. If not, okay.
I'm sure you'll get it eventually.
I log everything. And in DM780, it integrates with the HRD logbook. So there's a macro that actually is part of the 73. I have a macro for 73 that's, thanks for the QSO and part of that is it automatically logs the contact in the HRD logbook. And other, to a greater or lesser extent, I think most of the packages I talked about offer some sort of logging capability. I don't know how good it is. Your mileage is going to vary. Please try what you like. Try all of them and find what you like and go with it. I use what I like. I have other ulterior motives for using what I use, but that's my business. And, I encourage everyone to go out and I mean, if you Google, PSK31 or BPSK31, you'll get a bunch of hits on various sites related to it. And, you'll find if you Google PSK31 software, you'll get hits on all the different software types and a lot of the common ham websites like qth.net and qrz.com and some of these others will provide you lists of the different software packages that are out there. So it's try until you find the one you like, and don't necessarily settle on the first one you use either. I used a few before I decided I liked HRD really well.
Okay, so I've heard you say this twice now. So you said BPSK31 and you said PSK31. What's the difference there?
In the common language, they are the same thing. The official, I guess, the way it was named. So the software mode we're talking about, PSK31, was invented by a guy named Peter Martinez, G3PLX, in 1998. And, he called it binary phase shift keying at 31 baud. And then the system was further developed by this guy, Pavel, and I hope I'm saying this right. It's a Polish name, and I'm probably going to butcher it, but Pavel Halocha, SP9 VRC. And it was originally designed for Motorola radios. But the way it works is it uses a binary phase shift instead of a frequency shift, which is what RTTY and a lot of the other modes use. So it basically flips the polarity or flips the phase of the signal 180 degrees on send versus receive. So PSK31 and BPSK31 are the same thing. There is another variant that actually uses 4 signals. It's called QPSK31. The Q, I think, is quadrature, something quad, for 4. And it's not used really commonly. I mean, it's not found, I've never seen it used. There are other variants on PSK other than 31 as well that are just the data rates. There's 63, there's 124, 128, and those go significantly faster, obviously. But in the PSK world, PSK31 or BPSK31 is in my experience, I'm certainly no expert, but in my experience, is the most commonly used and most popular form of the mode.
Okay. Very interesting. Well, I think we've pretty much covered it. I mean, you've definitely piqued my interest with PSK31. That's for sure. I have a Linux box, an old Dell computer that I have, and I downloaded the ham radio Debian package that has the FL Digi built into it and a whole bunch of other amateur radio stuff. And awesome. I haven't quite got it up and running yet, but this conversation has really driven me, I think, a little bit more to get that set up and get my radio set up and get an antenna up for sure. So I thank you very much for that. And
well, I'll make a deal with you. I'll help you get PSK set up and running. You help me get Linux up and running when you figure that out. We'll swap skills here.
There you go. Well, if I ever get it up, I've had it now for about 2 months or so, and I have yet to get it figured out. So I'm working on that, and I've actually had several people say that they will help me with it, but I have yet to take them up on that offer. But is there anything else that you want to say to the listeners before we close up for the night?
I would say try it. It's fun. It's interesting. It's definitely something a little bit different. It's not how you typically think of operating radio because you're not pounding brass and you're not, that doesn't stress your voice out like, running long sideband conversations can do. Have fun with it. Let's see. It's May now, right? So field day's coming up in about 6 or 8 weeks. Mm-hmm. Check. So I can tell you, my club, when we do field day, we're doing for the first 4 hours. We'll have a station set up that's demoing digital modes, particularly PSK31, because for some bizarre reason, most digital contesting is ready, except at field day, all the groups like to run PSK31, and I can't explain that because it's certainly an outlier and an anomaly. But excuse me, check with your local clubs. Find a local club, see if they're going to run any digital at all at field day. If they are, go out and check it out. If you're in the Atlanta area, I will, as the chief cook and bottle washer and head cat wrangler of field day from my club, I will invite everybody listening, if you're in Atlanta, to come to the North Fulton Amateur Radio League field day event. You can find us on the ARRL field day site locator under the call sign Kilo 4 Juliet Juliet. Shameless plug there. Thank you for letting me get that in. And during the first 3 or 4 hours on Saturday, we're going to have a demo station set up that's running PSK31 because that's part of the way we see it as part of getting the younger generation interested because it uses computers and it uses what to them is the current technology, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we want to hook them in with something that interests them. But find your local club, see if they're going to have any digital up at field day, and if they are, take the time to go see and check it out and look at it. I'll tell you, my first DX contact was also my first PSK31 contact. Right after I got licensed at our field day, and it was with a ham in Athens, Greece.
Wow.
And you want to talk about setting the hook for a number of different things, chasing DX and for digital and just a whole bunch of different things. That really set and I was a new kid. I was wet behind the ears and I was sitting there with an Elmer helping me out and it was a lot of fun. If your local club field day site isn't doing anything with digital at field day, and that's not uncommon, and that's kind of the way of life at field day. Ask them if they're going to do any programs or encourage them to do programs on PSK and other digital modes, and see if any of the Elmers in the club will help you get set up with it because it can be a lot of fun. You can make those really good DX contacts. That you can't make now because the sun is misbehaving so badly that the phone frequencies are really hard to use.
Yeah, bad sun.
Yeah, bad sun. Bad sun. And not everybody's into CW. And we get that. And this is a nice in-between because gets through all the atmospheric garbage far better than sideband. And you can still make those good, neat DX contacts or have good conversations with the guy, 3 or 4 states over, with digital. And it doesn't take a lot of power. It doesn't take a lot of infrastructure, from an amateur radio perspective to get into it and get it up and running. And, if you've got a computer and you've got a sound card in the computer and you've got a radio and you've got a couple of cables and some free software, you're ready to go. And I guess that's kind of it. Check out, there are hundreds of resources online to help you out. And, check them out. Google is your friend. And just have fun with it. I guess that's the bottom line, is have fun.
Absolutely. That's what this hobby is all about.
That's it.
In any way that we can have fun, we're going to have it.
You got it.
Well, Ian, thank you very much for coming on, and especially coming on in such short notice. I greatly appreciate that. And thank you for, I thank you for giving me this PSK31 bug. My wife probably will not, but...
I have the same problem with my wife, so I certainly understand that.
So it was great having you on, and hopefully we can...
Thank you for having me.
Hopefully you can be my first PSK31 contact when I get it up. I'll give you that honor if you're around.
Well, you get it up and running, shoot me an email. You have my email. My email's good on QRZ, and we can set a sked up and make sure it happens.
All right, bud. Well, thanks again for coming on, and we will talk to y'all next time. Let's go ahead and take another quick break, and we will be right back. So today I was looking at the amateur radio forum on Reddit and came across this question that was being asked about how to get cables or your coax inside of your house. And, first thing that popped into my head was, this is what I did. I put a 3-inch or 2-inch PVC pipe, drill a hole in the wall, put a rubber cap on the end of it, put some holes in there to run the coax into, and silicone around the outside. That's how I did it. It worked. It worked great for 10, 15 years or so that I had my house. I haven't done it yet, but hey. But that was my first thought. So I scrolled down. I was going to comment on it, and the very first comment was basically the same thing that I was going to comment about. So why repeat it? So I just kind of liked it or voted it or whatever it is on Reddit, and rather than posting my thoughts on it, I continued to read through the comments, and I came across this really neat panel that is made by a KF7P Metalworks, I guess is what it is, and his website is kf7p.com. There is a link in the show notes so you can find it, but it's basically a metal box that you put on the outside of your house. And it has your ground plane, your ground panel on it, like we talked about a few episodes ago about grounding for lightning protection. It has the lightning arresters built into it. It has a hole in the top right that you can go into your house with. It has entries from your coax at the bottom of it to have your drip circle, basically for your coax. It comes at the bottom of it. Nice, neat little box that mounts on the side of your house. So really great little thing. And I thought that I would share it with y'all just in case any of y'all are looking to answer the same question too, right? So that is my ham blog spotlight of today. It's not a blog, but it's a really neat little thing that I found. And it's amateur radio related, right? So there you go. All right, so let's move on to our events section. All right, so for our upcoming events, we have a few of them. Not a whole lot, but a few. And remember, all the times that I'm going to be saying are going to be in UTC or Zulu time. So make sure that you adjust accordingly to your local time zone. For me, Central Time Zone would be -5. So first off, we have the 1010 International Sprint Contest on CW, and that is on May 6th, starting at 001, running through May 7th at 23:59. The F9AA Cup on PSK is on May 6th from 1200 hours to the 7th at 1200 hours. The ARI International DX Contest is on May 6th, starting at 1200 hours and running to 11:59 on the 7th. The 7th Area Call Sign QSO Party, or 7th Call Area QSO Party, I will get it right, I promise. And that is on the 6th, starting at 1300 hours and running till 700 hours on the 7th. The Indiana QSO Party is May 6th, starting at 1500 hours and running through the 7th at 300 hours. We have the Fist Spring Slow Speed Sprint. That is on May 6th, running from 1700 hours to 2100 hours. The Delaware QSO Party is on May 6th from 1700 hours to the 7th at 23:59. New England QSO Party is on May 6th, starting at 2000 hours and running to the 7th at 500 hours, and then it picks back up from 1300 to 2400 on the 7th. Next up, we have the RSGB 80 meter club championship on data, and it is on May 10th from 1900 hours to 2030. We have the Jakarta DX contest on 40 meters on May 13th from 1000 hours to 2200 hours. We have the HPC Worldwide DX contest on May 13th from 1200 hours to the 14th at 11:59. We have the CQ-M International DX contest on May 13th, starting at 1200 hours and running through the 14th at 11:59. We have the Arkansas QSO Party, my neighbors to the east, starting at May 13th at 1400 hours and running to 200 hours on the 14th. The MARAC County Hunters Contest is on May 13th, running from 1400 to 2400, and also the next day from 1400 to 2400 hours as well. And last but not least, we have the Fitz Spring Unlimited Sprint on May 13th from 1700 hours to 2100 hours. All the information in this segment was taken from the WA7BNM contest calendar, so you can find links to it in the show notes of today's episode, as well as links to each individual contest. Alright, so let's move on to our hamfests. Alright, so for our last segment of the day, we have hamfests. We have several of them up and coming. First one is today, actually, when this episode is released on May the 4th, and it is the Military Radio Collectors Group Convention in San Luis Obispo, California. Tomorrow on the 5th, we have the New England Amateur Radio Festival Near Fest 21 in Deerfield, New Hampshire. On the 6th, we have the ARAC Hamfest in Superior, Wisconsin. Blue Ridge ARS's 58th Annual Hamfest in Spartanburg, South Carolina. We have the Cadillac Amateur Radio and Computer Swap in Cadillac, Michigan. We have the CARA Hamfest in Sierra Vista, Arizona. The Fayette ARC Frog Fest 2017 in Fayette, Alabama. The MARA Hamfest in Wasilla, Alaska. We have the Mesilla Valley Radio Club Bean Feed and Hamfest in Las Cruces, New Mexico. The ORC Spring Swap Fest in Cedarsburg, Wisconsin. The Reno Ham Swap in Reno, Nevada. And the Greater Hagerstown Hamfest in Boonesboro, Maryland. The following, Sunday on the 7th, we have the Eastern Pennsylvania Section Convention in Bristol, Pennsylvania. The Jackson County ARC Hamfest 2017 in Ripley, West Virginia. And the DeKalb Hamfest in Sandwich, Illinois. The following weekend, on the 13th, we have the 13th Annual Rockingham County Swap Fest in Reidsville, North Carolina. The 2nd Annual Greater Midwest Radio Show in Hastings, Nebraska, I believe, NE. The East Greenbush ARA Hamfest in East Greenbush, New York. The EPARS Tailgate in Dade City, Florida. Iowa Section Convention in Boone, Iowa. We have the PVARC Annual Tailgate in Roswell, New Mexico. The RCARA Tailgate Trade Around in Ashland, Kentucky. And last but not least, the SCARC's 26th Annual Hamfest and Electronics Flea Market in Stanwood, Washington. All the information was taken in this section from the ARRL Hamfest, which you can find a link to in the show notes of today's episode, as well as links to each of the Hamfests. Alrighty, well, that pretty much shows this episode as finished. Definitely a wrap. We had a great episode, and I want to thank Ian Kahn, Kilo Mike 4 India Kilo, for coming on the show today, where we talked about PSK31. And like I said, I pretty well have the PSK bug now, I think. I'm definitely going to have to work on getting my my Linux computer up, my radio out of the box sitting beside me, and an antenna up on top of my building. So I really want to do that. I really have the bug, really. I mean, that's one way that I think I'm going to get on HF, and, voice just doesn't do it for me anymore. So maybe this will get me back on HF, and I'm really looking forward to it. I'm really hoping that I can get it done pretty soon, if time will allow, which is something that I don't have very much of. But you can find all the links that we've talked about, as well as some additional information in the show notes of today's episode that you can find at everythinghamradio.com/podcast/67. That's the number 67. You can find me on Facebook. The Facebook page is at facebook.com/everythinghamradio. The group, which is constantly growing, thank y'all very much for that. And that is at facebook.com/groups/everythinghamradio. You can follow me on YouTube at youtube.com/everythinghamradio, and of course on Twitter at K5CLM, which is probably where I am most active on. So that's the easiest way to find me. If any of y'all out there have a topic that y'all would like to hear about, or hear an interview about, or just a general talk about, please shoot me an email at k5clm@everythinghamradio.com. I really enjoy getting emails from y'all and comments and stuff like that. So thank you very much. And I hope to have some pretty good shows here coming up. I have one, I believe, hopefully next episode or the episode after that will be on radio-controlled vehicles using the amateur spectrum. So that's something that I'm really looking forward to. I've been interested in that for a very, very long time. So I guess that pretty much wraps it up. Thank you all very much for listening. If you have not signed up for my email list, you can do that at everythinghamradio.com/subscribe. Just fill out the form and click the sign me up button. You'll get an email with a link that you'll need to click on before you'll get anything from me. I don't do a whole lot of stuff on there. Basically just the podcast episodes, and any time I do just a blog post or something like that. Maybe a few other little odds and emails, so I'm not going to be spamming your email box with junk mail. So, and I promise I will not sell it either. I hate spam. It drives me crazy. Also, I mentioned before that I have my swag store open and up and running now. I have some coffee cups, some mouse pads, some coasters, stuff like that already up there. I have some the custom call sign desk plate that I'm going to be making. I'm making one right now with my call sign to show a picture of what it's going to look like for y'all. So if you want to wait until you see the picture of what it's going to look like before you buy it, I totally understand. But there is stuff up there you can buy, so you can find that at everythinghamradio.com/store. And I guess that pretty much wraps it up. I hope that y'all enjoyed this episode as much as I enjoyed talking with Ian. And until next time, this is K5CLM signing out. 73, y'all.